Well, hello everyone. This is Neal with Graveside Paranormal presents Spirits by the Graveside. Today's date is 4/17/2022. Happy Easter, everyone. Happy Easter, everybody in their homes. Happy Easter, everybody who's overseas, everybody who's in the military, anybody who are the police or the firemen are out tonight. Please, happy Easter to all. What I'd like to do is I'd like to bring in Steve for a minute here because Jill, Michelle is not here. I'm so used to saying Jill because she
Yeah.
was our co-host. I'm so used to it.
And
Michelle's not
Jill
here
would have really
tonight.
liked this episode, right?
Yeah. She would love this episode. She's always about wanting to do very positive things. She doesn't like it sometimes when I do everything we're talking about like ghosts and demons and stuff like that, which I understand. I get it, But me and Steve are going to be hosting tonight, and we are going to have on Bishop Christina Rake.
Yeah.
We are going to have her on today, and we are going to be talking about leading up to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. This is actually the greatest story ever told. This is actually a very important story to me. It's such a beautiful story. It's an amazing story. And a lot of people, they need to really realize is that if you want all the supernatural and ghost stories and this and that, go to the Bible. It has everything you need right there.
It's in there.
And so, exactly. So what'd you do today so far for Easter, Steve?
Well, I didn't hide eggs this year. My daughter just turned 21. And so that yesterday she turned 21. And
happy birthday.
Yeah, she drank me under the table, Neal.
She drank you under the table, did she? Well,
no. Actually, we had a glass of wine. That's it.
That's it.
So I am now a parent of an adult.
An adult, a real adult, a drinking adult, that is. Well, that's great. Me, I went over to my daughter's house. We had tons of food. We had deep fried turkeys, 2 of those. My soon-to-be son-in-law is going to be, he helped me out with those. We made ham, and we had just a really nice time. The one thing I always watch on Easter Sunday, at least it's big for me, you would think I'd probably watch The Greatest Story Ever Told or The Passion of the Christ or something like that. Mm-hmm. I actually watch the 10 Commandments. To me, it's like I find comfort in watching the 10 Commandments every Easter Sunday. You watch anything special on Easter Sunday?
No,
it's just this show here, man.
Yeah, that's all I wait for. I'm like, my favorite show is going to be on at 7.
I know Sunday. You do.
My mom watches this show.
Yeah, I know. She's my biggest fan.
Yeah. Hey, Mom. Yeah. And my dad, he started watching it too. So Neal, you're becoming famous in my household.
Like famous Amos.
Very famous. They want you to come over sometime.
Yeah, someday I'll come over.
I told them, no, you don't want that.
No.
But anyway.
All right. So we have a lot to cover tonight. We really, truly do. So I want to get right into the news right off the bat. Roll it, Steve. Out of Coast to Coast AM, which is one of my favorite shows ever. Listener Mike shares this wild photo and says this picture was taken with a hidden camera at the Moyle Springs, northern Idaho. The owner of the property noticed foot tracks some weeks earlier and set cameras up in the trees along the path of the tracks. The picture was taken from the camera mounted in the trees. It seems that it's a Bigfoot took a bite out of a red fir tree bark. In the original that I have, you can clearly see a piece of bark in the air circled. Now you can see that, but you know what, Steve? It looks like Harry and the Hendersons. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have to say that's, let's look at it again.
Yeah, let's look at that one more time.
So that arm doesn't have a hand?
It looks like, like what happened to Luke Skywalker when he finally figured out who his dad was.
I was going to ask, was this Bigfoot in some kind of lightsaber fight?
maybe there's lightsabers. I don't know what these guys. And why is it you can never get a clear picture? I don't understand.
I don't know.
I leave it up to everybody else to decide. What do you think that is? Do you think it's a Bigfoot or do you think it's a hoax? It's up to you. Me, I'm going to have to go a little bull on that one. A little bull. Hey, what's up, Alicia? Happy Easter to you as well, Alicia.
Easter.
All right. Next into the news. An
Okay.
overnight shift at a French fry factory in New Zealand came to a sudden stop when workers discovered a World War II era grenade among the thousands of potatoes set for processing. The surprising find reportedly occurred last Tuesday morning as Richard Turukara was inspecting a massive shipment of 100,000 spuds that had just been delivered to Mr. Chip's facility in the community of East Tamaki. The eagle-eyed employee initially assumed that he had simply spotted an oddly shaped stone that had gotten mixed in the potatoes, but soon realized that it was something far stranger, a grenade from World War II. Now, in the picture there, that looks like a potato. I don't know if they're supposed to be making us think that it is, but where is the picture of the real potato? That's what I mean, of the grenade. That would be nice to know.
That picture isn't the grenade; it's a potato.
Did they have a picture of the grenade?
It looks like it has a wick on it. Is that how they? Do you see that?
That's for those potato guns.
Well, potato yeah, maybe a grenade would be better than a potato.
Yeah, maybe but, so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey,
Wow.
That's part of our news for tonight. So, all right. Good night, everybody. No.
We do have something to announce, right?
Yes, we have some announcements. So, Graveside Paranormal presents Tragic Tour, May 21st. This is a 4.5-hour tour, ladies and gentlemen. This is part of our Old Tragic Innocence tour to the south side of Chicago. We also have Uncle Bob Trisek, who is going to be helping out. He's my man. We are going to be talking about Showman's Rest, the suicide of Frank Nitti, and many other things like the story of the miracle child Mary Alice Quinn, the Grimes sisters, and you'll enjoy a 4.5-hour ride as we entertain you, as usual, with videos and music as you go along the way. What do we have next, Steve?
Well, let's talk about this one more time.
We still need more vendors wanted for Parapalooza 2022. You have a deadline up until the first week of July. Yes, I believe it's the first week of July to have everything in. What's going to happen is the first 25, possibly 30, will be under the pavilion. The other ones will just be outside the perimeter, which will still be on the grounds, but you just won't have a roof over you. So that's where the staging area is. So we are actually have an unlimited amount of people that we need. But just so you know, the first 25 or 30 people will be under that pavilion area, but we'll all be same jam-packed area, though.
So we're kind of filling up, right?
Oh, yeah, we're filling up. I'll tell you that. I just got more in the mail Friday. I think for the holidays, the mailman didn't come around on Saturday.
Yeah, I think we have a couple more indoor spots, right?
Oh, yeah, we got.
But then we're going to be.
We're still good.
In a week or two, maybe it's going to just be the outdoor.
Yeah.
So if you want inside, now's the time.
Now is the time. And that brings us into Parapalooza. Parapalooza, the advertisement went up Wednesday, and oh my God, did that thing generate. I'll tell you. We are going to have entertainment from 12 o'clock all the way to 11:30 at night. We are going to have the group called Hellbilly Deluxe, which is a Rob Zombie cover band, which will be coming on at around 7:30. Then we're also going to be having Absolution, which is a tribute to Ghost, which is out of the UK. We're also going to be having the Windy City Ghostbusters with us. Those guys are great. We're going to have a 30-foot tall Ghostbuster, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. What else do we got? We have, of course, Pat and Rebecca from Ghostly Podcast, my very good friends. They are going to be having a surprise guest who they are going to be interviewing. That'll be talked about later.
Right, and we got the Bad Taste Crime, right?
We got Bad Taste Crime Podcast. These two girls, Victoria and Janelle, they're going to be out there and they're going to be talking about something about a true crime in the Chicagoland area. So that's going to be some entertainment. We're also going to be having, of course, our little horror girl, Kylie. She's going to be out there and she is going to be the MC of the whole day. She is very good at what she does. She's very entertaining. And she is going to be running a Scream Queen contest. Yes. So whoever can have that best scream is going to win $100 cash. I will give it away myself. And we're going to have Dr. Wax out there doing magic and comedy. Yes. And then we're going to do a game show called Deal with the Devil.
With the Devil. With
Devil incarnate himself.
Yeah.
Yes.
The devil himself, Bob.
Bob. Yeah, Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob.
He'll be out there. So we're going to have him out there. But before we get into it with Bishop Rake, we also have Paul Garrett Proctor, my man from the UK.
Yes.
Come to me from over the oceans, across the sea, Paul Garrett Proctor.
Here he goes.
Hello from the UK, this is Paul Garrett Proctor, and happy Easter as it would be to many of you. But in the pagan world, we tend to call it the time of Goddess Ostara, which, okay, some of it's overlapped, some of it's pretty similar. It's a time of rebirth, it's a time of new beginnings. But talking of my kind of pagan background and my way of life, this is where I thought that it would be interesting to do something different this time, and talk about something that is quite unusual to a lot of people. And this would be part of what I practice in my daily work as a psychic. I read ribbons. Yeah, now that is an unusual concept to many people, but it is actually one of the very oldest divination tools that would predate, a lot of other tools such as the tarot, such as runestones, the crystal balls. This is something that goes way back even further. We'd be looking back to probably around about the 12th century, when the travelling folk would go around selling their wares, which would be largely laces, ribbons, things of that nature. And to anyone who would make a purchase, they would give a reading from the ribbons that they'd purchased as thanks for their custom. Now, this is actually something that was featured in a version. I'm not going to say the original version because I'm not entirely sure, but a version of the Snow White story, where the Wicked Queen first attempted to take Snow White's life by disguising herself as an old peddler who went out with a basket full of laces and ribbons, proffering to sell them, and actually strangled Snow White. Of course, her 7 little friends saved her, and it was a few attempts later before the poisoned apple came along. But that is something that is not too widely known, but is actually perhaps quite, symbolic of what did used to happen, that these people, the peddler, the gypsies, the pagans, the wise woman of the village, I suppose, would go around, selling these things. Now, in this case, mine are just like that. Okay, we've just got them kind of all hooked together on a chain. They kind of, just flow freely in this case. I've got as many colours as I possibly can. I'll just show you that, it's just on kind of a chain like that. Traditionally, it would be on a perfect circle, a wooden circle, but that's not very practical in this day and age. I don't know quite how they used to do it. Or it would be on a wooden rod. Again, not very practical for everyday use. Hence, we do have our own ways. In my case, I will work with the colours more so. Some people have this amazing ability, particularly spirit mediums. They will use these. They will get the customer to pick their colours, and they'll make an amazing connection straight to spirit. Myself, I use them as a way to tune into the individual, such as, let's just say, if someone was to choose red and green, I'd be talking about, you've got a relationship that's very up and down, but somehow it's going to get there. It's going to reach a clearing in the woods. One way or another, it's all worth it. It stretches, but it doesn't break somehow. So, I work with the colours. Some work with spirit. Others even use it as a form of psychometry, in the way that you've probably seen a psychic using someone's jewellery or their watch or their necklace, and they hold it and they get the reading that way. Lots of different ways. Lots of, individual choices as to how this tool is used. But This is something that I practice on a regular basis. If you wish to find out more, then please get in touch. I'd be quite happy. This is something I offer as a service. It's usually used in all my readings before I use the tarot as well. So, yeah, there we are. There's some history for you of something that, is not that heard of these days. So I hope you found that interesting. And as ever, thank you, Neal. Thank you, Steve, and everyone else in the team for having me along. And I'll be back at some point to continue with more British history and famous spooky stories, whatever we can find to keep you entertained. Okay, thank you. Blessings. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, Paul Garrett Proctor from the UK. Always interesting stuff they puts out there. Originally, Paul Garrett Proctor started with us by talking about Amityville horror. He's written a couple books in there on Amityville horror from the UK. Very good books. I own two of them. Actually, one of them was actually dedicated to me. And I was so blown away that he put me in there. I was like, oh, wow, cool. So thanks again, Paul Garrett Proctor. Happy Easter to you.
Happy Easter, Paul.
Yeah. So that brings us in, Steve.
All right.
Right now, I want to welcome in Bishop Christina Rake. Hello, Bishop. How are you today?
Hi, Neal. I'm well. Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Happy Easter.
Happy Easter.
Yeah.
Easter. You know what? Before we get started, I like to always ask people, I like to get to know people, because this is our first interview with you. What brought you to your calling?
Oh, God. What didn't?
I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
No. Honestly, it's been since birth. I had dreams when I was 17 of being a Catholic bishop. I wasn't even Christian. I didn't think you could do that. I was a girl.
Right.
So that's just been a lifelong thing where I felt very strongly connected. I have psychic medium gifts, so there was always this connection to the other side. But I viewed it as a religious gift. I wouldn't have used the term psychic medium for the longest time. But it really honestly feels like I couldn't possibly do anything else. I just had to realize what that itch I couldn't scratch was. What is this that I can't do anything else? What is it? Trying to put your finger on Mercury until one day it just clicks. You're in the right place at the right time, and you realize it's ministry, and it's ordained ministry. And oh my dear God, what do I do now? So I went to seminary, got my master's in theological studies from Andover Newton at Yale, still a Protestant, converted to Catholicism, and was Roman Catholic until I just couldn't take that itch anymore. And I found independent Catholicism that allowed me to follow my calling as a woman and a Catholic.
Wow. You know what? When I first started reading your bio and stuff like that, I kudos. Number one, kudos to you.
Oh,
I was reading it, and what you've done with the timeline that you've been around living, is that it's amazing. It really is, and how you're breaking barriers. And
thank you.
I'm like, man, great for her. I thought it was amazing when I read your bio, and I'm going to read your bio right now. But I just want to, just get to know you a little bit. So I want to, just ask you some questions or ask that question. So let me just welcome you in one more time. Bishop Christina Rake is a theologian, author, speaker, and a mother. The Reverend Bishop Christina Rake is the American Apostolic, and pardon me once again, Old Catholic Church leader. Am I correct on that?
That's correct.
All right. And you are also a professor of demonology.
Yes, I teach theology, scripture, demonology at St. Hildegard Seminary, which I also founded and am president of. It's an online graduate theology school, but anyone is able to take any course. They don't have to seek a degree. So it's for any enrichment possibilities.
Okay, great. That's awesome, man. I mean, ma'am. Sorry. But don't mind my ignorance sometimes. I do apologize.
Oh, no, please. Questions are great.
All right. So this is going to lead us right into Holy Week. I want to start it off with Palm Sunday. So, and I love this story, and I remember when I was a little kid, I used to watch all the old movies, and I went to a Catholic grade school. Like I told you, actually, my mom was a nun. I know that sounds a little odd. My dad was actually a brother. That sounds odd too, but they met after the fact.
Right.
And I have other people. My uncle, he's a priest as well. And so it's not that I'm some great mindset on the whole Catholicism or anything like that. But of course, I've learned a couple things because you were forced as a child on Wednesdays to go to church, on Thursdays to go to church, and this and that. So you kind of pick up things as you go along.
Right.
So, and I've always enjoyed all the movies that they ever did. Like I was telling you about the Ten Commandments. Is there a certain movie that you watch around this time?
Ben-Hur was on every year. And every year it was Ben-Hur, Wizard of Oz, and Star Wars when I was a kid. I'm a Gen Xer. Every Easter. Or Willy Wonka. That was the other one.
Or Willy Wonka. Okay.
Those were for some reason. But I always associate them with Easter now.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's take this into Holy Week. So we're going to start out with, Bishop, March 29th, AD 33. This is when Jesus comes into Jerusalem on a donkey. It was said that the Messiah would come in on a donkey. And can you help us along on that day of what happened on March 29th, AD 33?
Sure. The first thing you have to understand was that the Jewish people were expecting something like this at around this time. And we tend to look at these stories in Scripture as if they happen completely in isolation from each other. But 30 years ago, people still remembered Herod, the king, killing all the boys 2 years and under in an attempt to kill Jesus. So we're getting into 33 AD, and these 60-year-olds are saying, it was about 30 years ago that they said the Messiah was born, and Herod freaked out and killed all our sons. So people were already looking when Jesus came onto the scene. And he had a public ministry from the age of 30 to 33. So Palm Sunday, he had been in ministry for 3 years, and he'd done amazing things. He had said he was God, the Son of God. Sometimes it's hard to see that if you don't know what the Jewish people were expecting or the theology, but he outright claimed it so many times. And everybody's excited because what was the Messiah going to do? He's going to kick out the Romans. He was going to reestablish the monarchy for Israel. He was going to kick all of the corruption out of the temple. He was going to lead a international from Zion, an international spiritual political kingdom. All sacrifice in the temple would cease. The only meal that would happen in the temple was the Todah, which was a meal of blessed bread and wine. This was all going to happen for the Messiah. In fact, some of the prophecy said that even the Messiah, one of the natural things that would happen when the Messiah came was an overflow of fish. So you could kind of see why the apostles, when their nets are overflowing, are like, oh, Lord, So they're all expecting this. So Jesus is coming into Jerusalem. This is the Messiah. It's it, guys. We're kicking out our oppressors. Everything is going to be so much better. And the first thing he does is kick all of the money changers out of the temple. And that's what got him killed.
Right.
You don't mess with the machine. You don't mess with the money.
And that's what happened on the next following day, which was the 30th on AD 33. Now, getting back, though, to the Palm Sunday, it was prophesied that he would be coming in on a donkey.
There are two prophecies in Isaiah that got kind of mingled together in one of the Gospels, because in the other Gospels it was just a donkey, but there was a donkey and the foal of a donkey. So Jesus wound up having both of them. I believe it was the Gospel of John. In others, it was just the donkey. And you have to understand, 4 Gospels, these are 4 eyewitnesses who wrote these books at the request of Christians within 25 years of Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection, and they were questioning eyewitnesses. But there are some areas that one will focus on and another won't, so that there are differences between them. So in one, he had two. He had one kind of tethered to him, and he's riding a donkey, and people are throwing palms, they're throwing their coats on the ground, they're screaming Hosanna to God in the highest, which was an acclamation that our moment has come. Hosanna, God is here. And the excitement is absolutely palpable. At that moment, they all believed that this was it. They were going to be free. Everything was going to come up Jerusalem, and Jesus was going to now lead a world government from Zion, where there would just be permanent peace forever. And that's how Holy Week starts, on this absolute high. Everybody believes in him. Everybody loves him. Everybody's ready for him. Right. It's not how it was going to end, but that's how it started.
No, it's not how it ends, no. Don't mean to give it away.
Yeah, we don't want to ruin
and the other thing is that you're leading into Passover, and there's at least close to 40,000 people who are in Jerusalem, but you're almost 4 times doubling the amount because of Passover.
Right.
So you're also getting much larger crowds for this Holy Week, which, like you were talking about, the Money Changers, that takes us into Monday, the next following day. Tell us a little bit about that. And also that I believe there was he cursed a fig tree on his way to the temple. Am I correct?
Well, he talked about the fig tree. Not necessarily cursed it. That's one of the legends. But in Scripture, Jesus talks about the fig trees, and that every tree that does not bear good fruit will have its branches pruned and tossed into the fire. And he uses the example of the fig tree, not necessarily at that time, but leading up to this, and all of his discourses and all of his prophecies and discussions about what was coming. And he was saying that to warn the religious authorities at the time, your faith has become an actual monetary transaction. You know, you say, I'll just sin and give God the 2 turtle doves. There's nothing in the heart. There's no conversion of heart. And don't Catholics do that too? You know, I'll sin. I'll go to confession on Saturday. It's not about transformation anymore. It's about just getting by, kind of fooling God. And Jesus talked about our hearts of stone have to be malleable. We have to be willing to be vulnerable with God. And they just weren't. They were so set in their ways at that point.
Right. 1 minute you're praying and you're believing in the Holy Spirit, or at the time you're just believing in God. But at the same time, you're selling things that shouldn't be sold inside of a temple. You're doing actions that shouldn't be being done in a temple. And God's trying to, or Jesus at the time is trying to explain to you in his anger, is that this ain't right. Am I correct on that?
Well, actually, what they were doing was absolutely necessary. They weren't doing anything wrong. You have to remember that people, like you said, were coming in for the Passover. You were not allowed to give money to the temple that had engravings on it of people's heads. So think about this. All Roman coinage had the emperor on it. All Syrian coinage had their leader on it. People could not use that in the temple to buy their lamb for Passover, to buy their sacrifice, to buy what they needed. They had to bring their money to a special temple changer to get money without graven images to buy their lamb. So they're actually performing an absolutely necessary sacrifice. Jesus's point wasn't you shouldn't be doing this, because they were obeying the law. It was the only way to obey the law in Leviticus. Jesus was saying, this is the problem. It was a metaphor for him. Your transactional idea with God is not what God wants. God wants a relationship with you, not for you to treat him like an obligation. And so Jesus's anger was at the way all of us, not the Jewish authorities, but the way we all get into the mindset of negotiating with God in our heads instead of simply being loved and understanding that our existence depends entirely on God's holding us into being. Otherwise, we'd cease to exist.
Right.
Makes complete sense. Thanks. I appreciate that. So then that'll take us into Tuesday, March 31st, AD 33, where he starts to talk about the Pharisees and starts to denounce them. Can you take us into that day a little bit?
Well, while Jesus was in Jerusalem, he gave a discourse that's recorded in Matthew. And Matthew wrote his gospel in Hebrew to the Jewish people. So Matthew was emphasizing things that the Jewish people who are reading this would have understood. And it's called the woes. Woe to you, Pharisees, you do this. Woe to you, scribes, you do that. And Jesus's biggest thing was that do as the Pharisees say, not as they do. Literally using those words. And because they sit on the seat of Moses, because they interpret the law. They're pastors. They're the pastors of the day. But the problem was that they, again, as all humans do, entered into this notion of self-righteousness. They were, I'm the bishop, and therefore you will kiss my ring, and you will do this, and you will do that, and I'm a scribe, and therefore you will do this. And it just frustrated Jesus to no end that religious leaders were lording it over others. And he actually used those terms when we get to Holy Thursday, when he washes the disciples' feet. The pagans lord it over others when they have titles. It won't be so with you, because whoever is first has to also be last. And so these woes that he pronounces on Jerusalem, he prophesies the destruction of Jerusalem, which would occur in 70 AD, 37 years after the crucifixion. And Tacitus records that Vespasian laid siege to Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, and for 3 years wouldn't allow any food in or out of the city, and people were selling their children for meat. So he prophesies that event as happening soon as a result of what they were doing. And he was right, because that focus on nationalism that they had at the time is what caused Vespasian to come into Jerusalem.
Okay. All right. So then thanks. And that takes us into Wednesday, April 1st, AD 33, where the Pharisees are now conspiring and wanting to talk to someone, and that enters in Judas. Can you take us into that?
Well, with Judas, there are so many legends in the Middle Ages surrounding Judas, that he had red hair and just fascinating stuff with him. But Judas was one of the 12 apostles that Jesus had brought into his community specifically to witness to him. And you needed 2 men to legally testify to any event. So he has these 12 men as his testimony to go out into the world. And one of them is Judas Iscariot. And Judas Iscariot is the treasurer. He's the one in charge of the money for the group. A lot of people don't know that, but it actually says that. And Judas is becoming disillusioned with Christ. And if you pay close attention to all 4 Gospels, he becomes disillusioned right at the point of John chapter 6, where Jesus literally says, you have to chew my flesh and drink my blood in order to have life in you. And so this is 1 year before the crucifixion, and a lot of scholars will trace it to that point because Jesus is emphatic that you're going to eat him. Yeah. And a lot of the apostles are like, what is going on? It says he lost followers because he said that.
They didn't understand symbolism.
Exactly. And they didn't understand what he meant by that. So when we get to the Last Supper and Jesus holds up the bread, they're like, oh, I thought you were going to start carving yourself up. You know, they're like,
oh no, please stop, please stop.
You know, seriously. But Judas is completely disillusioned. And what's so fascinating, especially in the Gospel of Matthew, Judas is the only person during Holy Week that does not call Jesus Lord. He only calls him Rabbi. Everybody else is calling Jesus Kyrios, God. All of his followers, except Judas, he only calls him Rabbi. And so Judas goes to the Pharisees and says, what will you give me if I turn him into you? And they work with him, and they come up with 30 pieces of silver. That's all you get. And he's fine. And that's the agreement they make for him to betray Christ. And really, they didn't really need Judas. They could have arrested Jesus at any point. He'd been teaching publicly this whole week. And yet he was part of the plan somehow.
Well, that takes us into Thursday, April 2nd, AD 33, where we talked about, and we'll get into washing the feet of the 12, the Last Supper, and then suffers in Gethsemane. Gethsemane. I'm hoping
Gethsemane.
Exactly. Thank you.
So one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is that there are 3 Passovers. There isn't one Passover night in Judaism in 33 AD. There are 3. There is the first on Thursday, the second on Friday, and the third on Saturday. Because in Exodus, the command is that you will offer this for the people of the congregation of Israel. So there are 3. So there's all this argument, it contradicts. How could he have the Passover and be crucified on the Passover? Because there are 3. The first, the second, and the third Shigagah. So Jesus was crucified on the middle Passover. So first, just, to get that in our heads, because yes, he did celebrate Passover, and then he was crucified on Passover. And then he was in the tomb on Passover and rose the evening of the third Passover. So it's all part of that. And so he begins the Passover meal. To have this understand is that the Passover lamb represented the freedom from death. In Exodus, God's avenging angel went through the Egyptian lands and killed the firstborn son of everyone. The Jewish people were commanded to kill a lamb without blemish and to sprinkle their doorposts with the blood. But that wasn't enough to save you. You had to eat the lamb, all of it. And if the lamb was too big and your family too small, then you grabbed another family. It had to be eaten. So when the Jewish people, and God said, this is a permanent, perpetual, for all time memorial sacrifice that you will have. And when the Jewish people eat this, they do so with their pant legs rolled up, their shoes off, and a staff in hand. And the child asks, why is this night unlike any other night? And the patriarch says, because of what the Lord God did for me in the desert of Egypt. It is an actual present act. So Jesus is celebrating the Passover with his disciples, not just the 12, whole bunch of them. Look at the upper room. It's massive. And so he's having this Passover with them. He establishes this night the Mass, the Eucharist, and the priesthood. So he does it backwards. Jesus establishes the institution of the church before the crucifixion. And I'll explain why when we get to the crucifixion. But it was vital to him that you understand the difference. You understand that he was the Passover lamb, because he didn't finish the Passover. There was a 5th cup of wine that he didn't drink. And he drank it on the cross. It was vinegar on a hyssop branch, which was the branch of the Passover. So it was very important. And also, no lamb is mentioned in the Last Supper, just bread and wine. So Jesus is establishing a new Passover so that the second death, the death of our souls, passes over us as Christians, just as literal death passed over the Jewish people. And so Jesus washes the feet of the apostles to demonstrate to them that the church will always be about humility and service. When I ordain a priest, I put their stole on across their heart like a yoke, and I say, accept the burden of the priesthood, because it is absolute servitude and slavery to God. And so this moment is huge. And then he goes out into the Garden of Gethsemane. Passover's still, on continuous loop. And he prays in the garden. And his human part, because he's God and man in one, his human soul was so scared that the capillaries in his skin burst. This is an actual biological fact that occurs to people under strenuous situations. And he sweat blood. Blood was pouring down him just from the thought of what was coming, the torture and the death. And Judas comes and kisses Jesus on the cheek and says, "Hail, Rabbi." And they arrest him. And Jesus even says to them, "Why are you betraying me with a kiss, Judas? I've been teaching this whole time. Why are you doing this?" And but here's the great thing. Do you remember how everybody loved him on Sunday? Everybody runs. Boom, they're out. They're gone. They're gone. In fact, the Gospel of Mark says one guy ran so fast that they grabbed his cloak and he stripped naked to get away. It's a naked guy just running. Just let them have his clothes and ran. They were so scared.
Wow.
That would be the first streaker then.
Exactly. It's the part.
I guess that would. All right. Thank you. So that takes us into Friday, April 3rd, AD 33. I know that everything has to start like very early in the morning because during Passover, their law, the Jewish law, is that they have to stop by the time the sun goes down. Am I correct on that?
Well, no. Friday night was when it would have to stop. Everything would stop at sundown. So during the night, Jesus is arrested. He is sent to Herod and then goes before Pilate on Friday morning, Pontius Pilate, the governor. And Pontius Pilate is told by the Jewish authorities, crucify him, do something with this guy, because he's violating our law. And they get false witnesses, and they're not really false. They tell the truth, but they tell it in a way that makes Jesus, look awful. They essentially say he claimed to be God, and that's enough. That's enough. That's heresy. So he goes to Pilate. Pilate says, "No, you do something with him." And they say, "We can't. It's Passover. We can't kill him. You kill him." So Pilate has him flogged. While this is occurring, Pilate's wife has a dream and comes to him and says, "Have nothing to do with this. Just stay out of it." And Pilate can't. Pilate is in a backwater. He hates his job. He wants to go back to Rome. He doesn't want to deal with all this drama that he keeps getting because they keep uprising in the Middle East. And so Jesus is stripped. He is crowned with a crown of thorns, which is excruciating because the trigeminal nerve that goes to your eye, your nose, and your jaw begins here. So the thorns, they used a branch. The thorns were this big, the type of branch they used in the Middle East. After he is scourged, I never knew what killed Jesus, because you look at the crosses and you're like, the hell killed him? I mean, like holes in his wrist, really? As a kid, I didn't understand. But if you've ever seen a real corpus, it was the flogging. I mean, it tears your skin off. The hooks are meant to rip your flesh off your bones.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So not only when let me not get ahead of myself. Jesus is then led out carrying his cross, just as Isaac had with Abraham. Just as any criminal, he was carrying the method of his own crucifixion. He fell 3 times doing it, which is something that I like to remind people of when they feel bad that they've screwed up. And then he's led out to the hill called Golgotha, the skull. This is extremely important theologically because when we fell in the garden, God gave a prophecy to to Eve, that there would be another Eve and her son would kill or step on the head of the serpent of Satan. Jesus is crucified in the skull. And so at the crucifixion, if you imagine how Jesus died, if you hold your arms out behind you, now hold them up and try to breathe. You suffocate. You suffocate to death. Now, the tortures the Romans didn't invent, they perfected. So there's a little beam by your feet, and you could just go tippy toes enough to grab breath and come back down. When Jesus dies, the temple veil is ripped in 2. This is the giant thick curtain that separated the people from the Holy of Holies. Once a year, the high priest went in there, and they would tie a rope around his waist with a little bell, because if he went in unworthily, he would drop dead, and they needed a way to get the dead body out of there without going in. This is an actual thing they did. But because Jesus, in dying as the God-man, destroyed death, and St. Paul says it's our fear of death that causes us to sin. And it's the fear of physical death, but it's also the fear of not having enough. It's the fear of our psychological death. It's the fear of the death of our illusions. Now, remember, Jesus dies on the cross. They pierce his side, St. Longinus, with his spear. Out comes blood and water. That was first evidence that he was dead because his lungs were filled with fluid and the heart had stopped pumping. But second, it represents baptism and Eucharist, the church born from the side of God, because what comes out when you have a baby? Blood and water. It's all about birth from the heart of Christ. The church is birthed. We are birthed. Now, remember last night, Jesus did all this awesome stuff and they were all excited. We have a church now. We have sacrifice now. We have a priesthood now. And the next day they're like, holy crap, he died? I mean, really, you've got to understand the high and then the crash that the disciples are having right now. Because as far as they're concerned, they were wrong. This wasn't the Messiah. They failed. They wasted 3 years of their life. Now the Jewish authorities and the Romans are after them. It was all for nothing. This is where everybody is at the end of Good Friday. They are destroyed.
Now, one of the questions I have is, now the 2 criminals who were on his sides,
yes,
actually their legs were broken and he was the only one who was lanced. Am I correct on that?
That is correct. They would break the prisoner's legs so they could no longer get breath and they'd strangle very quickly.
Right.
Jesus's bones, as the lamb without blemish, the Passover lamb's bones were not allowed to be broken. So it was very important for John to point out to people, they didn't break his legs, they lanced him, and that's how they determined he was dead.
Right. And also, before he was crucified, as we know, he had the trial, and it was between him and Barabbas. And Barabbas was set free, but it was only up until right before Jesus passed on the cross, Barabbas was caught. Am I correct on this? And then he was killed. Am I correct?
That's not in scripture, but it is part of legend. The legends that developed around the Middle Ages. Barabbas is Hebrew for son of the Father. So this is a huge moment of irony that the people who were screaming glory to God in the highest and peace through his Christ on Sunday, are screaming, crucify him on Friday. Instead, give us the criminal who actually tried to overthrow Rome, because that's what we wanted. This is not the Messiah you were expecting. This is a spiritual kingdom. This redemption isn't visible. We divorced God. We tore the fabric of the universe apart. We fell into the material world from the heavenly. And Jesus, in facing the death Adam couldn't face, sewed it back up again, so that we are now reunited with God. Not only that, but through the resurrection and ascension, think about this. God has a human body inside of him in heaven. That's why we can go. That's why we can be part of God, because
that bridge.
He has it there. That bridge. Exactly.
All right. So then that takes us into Saturday, AD 33. I believe it was April 4th. And he is going to be buried in a tomb, whereas the two other criminals that were on the side of him, using the word criminal, are thrown just basically in a pile of other bodies and bones. But then he comes forward, Bishop Rake, and allows them. He comes with a law from or some paperwork from Pilate to allow him to put him inside of a tomb that he owns. And who is that?
Joseph of Arimathea. And this is Friday. This is Friday right after the crucifixion. So we're talking 3:30 Good Friday, because Saturday isn't just a Passover, it's the Sabbath. And they could not anoint him on the Sabbath. Sundown occurred right as he went into the tomb. And so they couldn't anoint him. They couldn't prepare him for burial. Joseph of Arimathea was a very powerful Pharisee who was a follower of Christ. And he was so powerful, he could go to the Roman governor and say, give me the body. And Pilate did. And the other Pharisees who weren't with Jesus said, look, he said that he was going to rise on the third day. His people are going to steal the body. You need to put a guard. And Pilate said, all right, you can have two. And so they rolled the stone, and it was the women coming Sunday morning to actually anoint him and prepare him for burial that realized that he had risen, because no work can be done on Saturday. It was a Passover and a Sabbath. It was kind of like a double whammy as far as holy days go. But that doesn't mean Jesus wasn't doing something Saturday. It was while he is in the tomb that he descends to hell, to the dead, Sheol, the Jewish abode of the dead. And in descending down into the depths of the earth, Paul says, he collected all of the righteous who died before he came, who couldn't go back to God as a human being. So Adam, Abel, Abraham, David, Jacob, Isaac, all the patriarchs, all the matriarchs, he brings them up into heaven with him when he, on Saturday, he brings them up, gates open, and it's on 6 a.m. Sunday morning when the sun rises that these women come to the tomb, because only women could anoint a dead body. They come to the tomb and it's empty, and the burial cloth is on the floor, and the head wrap, the napkin around the head, is in the corner, and he's gone, completely gone. And they think that the Pharisees have stolen him. But next to the tomb are these angels who tell them, don't look for him among the dead. He's risen, as he said. And so, and I just want to make this point as a female priest, for hours, the entire Christian church was a single woman until she told the apostles. So Jesus died because, and he knew a woman would find him because they were the only ones who could anoint him. Mary Magdalene finds this out, runs to the apostles. They're hiding. She goes right to the tomb. I'm not afraid of anything. La. And they're hiding. And she runs and tells them, he's risen. he rose. He said he was going to do that, and he rose. And the three main apostles, Peter, James, and John, go running to the tomb. And Peter walks in, and they're like, he's gone. And so at this moment, they went from high to crash to just total shock and amazement that they were expecting this kingdom, but that's not what happened. This is so much better. And isn't that our experience of God? Thank God for unanswered prayers, because sometimes the answer is no, but just wait, I'll give you something better.
Right.
Now, didn't they, when they placed him in the tomb the first time, the Pharisees came there to make sure the body was there. Then they closed it again and sealed it. Am I correct?
Well, they placed a guard. So they saw the body placed in, and then they told Pilate, you need a guard there in addition to our own, because they're going to steal it. And so that's what happened. They didn't double check. They watched it put in, and then they requested additional guards, because the Pharisees had a temple guard, but it was Pilate who could order professionals, Roman legions, to do it. And so Pilate said you can have 2 centurions to do it. And so they were there.
Okay. Now, then when Mary originally started running to the disciples, weren't they actually originally a little upset with her, only because they were angry with themselves because of that a lot of them hid on Jesus? And they didn't want to believe her?
They weren't frustrated with her. And a lot of people, unfortunately, in the 6th century, she got associated with a woman of sin, but Mary of Magdala was not a prostitute. Those are 2 different people. They weren't frustrated with her. Peter wept. When Peter denied Jesus 3 times, he started sobbing hysterically. And it is the one part of movies that is very difficult for me to see, because I feel for Peter, because I know if I had been there, I'd have done the same thing. So,
and that's good that you're honest about it.
Well, no, I know I would have. I know I would have crucified him. I'd do it again if he showed up. I'd be like, you are definitely not who you say you are. I wouldn't believe it. I know who I am. I would like to think I would, but I'm not sure I would. But they were hiding, and John says, for fear of the Jews, and by that they meant the Pharisees who had crucified Jesus. And Mary comes in. Now, bear in mind, she's a woman, and she's one of them. And they should have dismissed her entirely. But what she was saying was just too amazing. And so they ran to see for themselves.
Sure. Okay. And then that takes us into the resurrection. And Jesus has been resurrected. It is Sunday, April 5th, AD 33. How many times after the resurrection did the disciples actually see Jesus and sit and talk with him? Maybe have something to eat with him. How many times was that?
Jesus appeared in public 8 times, not just to the disciples, but to crowds of thousands. In fact, there were 5,000 people present during the ascension, and they watched them. Because this faith spread quickly. And the reason it spread quickly was because there were so many eyewitnesses, not just to those events, but to knowing that the tomb was empty. I mean, that was a huge controversy. Think about that. It was a massive problem for Pilate, for everybody, that the tomb was empty. There were people who were witnesses to the dead rising, to the blind seeing, to the feeding of the 5,000. Witnesses to Herod, witnesses to the way everybody behaved. They were there. They saw it. And, Sunday morning, as I said, Mary goes to tell the apostles. The apostles see he's risen, but he appears to them on Sunday after they've seen that the tomb is empty. And believe me, they don't know what to think because this is not what they expected to happen. And they don't know what to think. They're still hiding, and they're talking about who could have taken them. I mean, they see it, but they're still not believing it because they're human beings. And Jesus suddenly, in a locked room, is standing among them. Mm-hmm. And they freak out. They are screaming. They think he's a ghost. Now, Jesus deliberately asks them for food several times when he appears to them over the course of the 40 days. He was appearing for 40 days before he ascended, right? Because Jewish people believed that ghosts could not eat. And that's why Jesus continuously asked for food to demonstrate this was not a phantasm body, but a regular body, an actual physical body. So he let them touch him. He let them poke their fingers through his hands. He ate with them. They saw that even though he could move through walls, and this was a spiritualized body, it was also a physical one. This was not a ghost. This was not an apparition. This was Jesus.
Right. Now, I remember when I was a kid that you were told that Jesus said that you cannot touch me until I have ascended, until I ascend to heaven. I cannot be touched.
No, that's nowhere in there.
That has never been in there.
No, it's not in there. No.
I'm trying to remember when I was a kid. I remember hearing something like that.
That I can't be touched.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of maybe what someone might have misinterpreted.
Probably more than likely misinterpretation.
Yeah. No, it wasn't that I cannot be touched. He did talk about the fact that once that they want him to ascend, that he has to go, because if he doesn't go, the Holy Spirit can't come.
Right.
So maybe someone misunderstood that. But I mean, Thomas wasn't with them, and they tell Thomas he appeared to them, and Thomas the apostle says, I won't believe it till I put my hand in his side. And Jesus appears to Thomas, doubting Thomas, and says, go ahead. And Thomas does it. Exactly. So that he was letting them touch him so that they would understand that he wasn't a ghost.
Right. And also on the resurrection, there was more going on that a lot of people don't know about, and I didn't know about until recently, that other people were resurrected on the day that Jesus was resurrected. Am I correct?
Yes. The prophecy of the Messiah was that there would be two resurrections. There would be one in Jerusalem and then one all around the world. So when Jesus is crucified, darkness fills the land. There's an earthquake. The temple veil tears from top to bottom. And this isn't a small curtain. We're talking 80 feet tall by 100 feet, just shredded and falls so that God is now with his people. And the dead in Jerusalem rose. And those people didn't disappear. They walked around for another 30, 40 years. We have, people think we just have the Bible. We don't. We have tons of writings from the time period from Christians and non-Christians. And there are Christian writers who are parallel in time with the Apostle John, who wrote that the dead were still walking around who had risen in Jerusalem, and that you could still talk to them, that they were still there. So yes, the dead in Jerusalem rose. Jerusalem was supposed to be the first fruits of everything that would happen around the world afterwards, and that's exactly what it was. It was ground zero for the entire Christian event.
So then these people here from Jerusalem who resurrected, they eventually did pass, though.
Yes, their natural lives. They lived a natural life.
They're unnatural lives.
So
exactly.
They resurrected in a normal human body, not in a spiritually enhanced body.
Nope, it was it was them, the way Lazarus was resurrected, rather than Jesus, who was divine, had a resurrection body. The others were in their regular bodies.
Okay.
They just clawed their way out of tombs and appeared walking around, scaring the bejesus out of
Ma, you're home.
Yes, exactly. But honestly, I mean, it's where some Jewish customs for keeping ghosts out have come from over the years. There's always been a belief in that, but these were not ghosts. Mm-hmm. These were people who tore off burial clothes and went home. And remember, during this time period, you died young very often from infection, from epilepsy, from diabetes. I mean, there was no cure for things.
So
yeah, exactly.
When they were resurrected, they were cured of any ailment?
No, it wasn't like that. They just basically, like, if I die, oh, I see your question. There's no record of like what happened to everybody. I don't know if they were healed from the affliction that killed them. It would be kind of a bummer if you rose from the dead from dying of diabetes and died 3 days later, but I don't know. I just have no idea.
I got to suffer all again.
Yeah. What the hell? Yeah.
Yeah, that wouldn't be.
But it's a good question. I've never thought about it.
Yeah. One question I do have. What is the significance of 40 days? Let's take, for instance, Noah. Let's take the significance of Moses. Let's take the significance of the Ascension. What is the 40 days?
Not just all that. I mean, 40 hours. Jesus from 3 p.m. Friday to 6 a.m. Sunday is 40 hours in the tomb. What I'm going to ask you, the number 40 is significant throughout the Middle East, going back to Samaria, who invented the written language in 4,500 BC. What happens in 40? It's a big part of human existence. Has nothing to do with society, just part of our actual biological function. What happens in exact 40s?
Change.
Think about it.
Change? Well, it was for me.
Pregnancy. It's exactly 40 weeks.
Wow.
Oh, all right.
And they say women should, or they used to say, maybe they still do, that after you give birth, you should take it easy for 40 days.
Yeah. It's 40 weeks. Now, every single one of those examples you've given me, at the beginning of the 40, there is a seed. And at the end of the 40, there's a new creation. So the Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years. There was their escape from Egypt as a bunch of slaves and their emergence as a coherent monotheistic religion, a people. The 40 days of Noah, there was this small group of people. And then at the end of it, the world was cleansed. And the flood that's a whole other thing. It had to do with the Nephilim, not humans. But, look at those 40s, look at Jesus's crucifixion and resurrection, new creation, 40. So that's why that number is significant.
Hey, it's interesting.
Bishop, do you notice how Steve's kind of like glowing over there?
Am I glowing?
Yeah, because you really, man, you made him happy with your answers, man.
Well, yeah, no, I like that. But the symbolism of Jesus dying at age 33 and not 40.
Yes.
Now, there's and this is symbolism that kind of goes with other religions as well, right? Where most people, not all people, have 33 vertebrae in their body. And that represents the path of Jesus and his life in ascending from the low vertebrae to the top vertebrae. And then there's a talk of the pineal gland. Right. And I'll just put myself up here real quick just to kind of point out where that is, right? So Jesus is ascending, and this ascension can happen in our bodies, right? We can ascend to the center, and the eyes represent the two thieves on the cross that were died with, or were crucified with Jesus. And they were the sinners. Like our eyes see the world, and that's where sin starts sometimes with people. They want what they see and shouldn't have. And then Jesus was wounded. Was it 5 times?
5 wounds. Yes.
5 wounds.
Yep.
And those are the 5. They represent maybe the 5 senses in our experience. The 5 senses that kind of can tempt us to sin, right? So I've heard this, that there might be some symbolism in that number of 33, the 5 wounds, the 2 thieves, and the ascension to the pineal gland, where you might have a godly experience or transcendence.
That, numerology in Judaism was huge, very important. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says God's name, Yahweh, I am, 7 times. Just say he says I am 7 times. The 7th time he says it, he knocks everybody over in the Garden of Gethsemane by saying it. Numerology is, and where does 7 come from? Well, your position anywhere on the earth is 7. You have north, east, west, south, up, down, and where you're standing, center. So there's, this sense that it's a completeness. That's everywhere you could go. They don't count diagonal because you can't fly. All numerology is almost written throughout nature, just by observation. So the 40s, and the 7s and the 3s. 3 is very significant because a 3-legged structure is strong and can stand up and hold weight, but that's not the only thing. I mean, there are numbers written throughout the universe that have tremendous significance. And when you understand that our universe is created for truth, whatever truth that is for you, whatever way you find yourself heading towards the divine, there are certain things that are just part, mathematically, geometrically, musically, math is music, that we just pick up in echoes, and we metaphorically incorporate them into our stories of searching for truth, into our everyday experience, because we're also mathematical. We're also walking equations, unbalanced equations, because of free will. I mean, it's all connected, all of that. So, of course, religions around the world would have significant numbers, and those numbers would have relationships to the human body, to human experience, to, what's the name of the golden ratio? You know what I mean? I can't remember the name of the ratio, but it all is connected to our experience as creatures in a created universe, where the echo of even our beginnings is still felt, still makes music. They still feel the Big Bang. So it is all interconnected. Exactly. It's all part of it. So that makes perfect sense, that we would find meaning in our own experience, and that meaning would transfer metaphorically into some of the things that we use to reach the sacred or the divine.
Right.
Oh, that was very deep. And I know Steve was holding that in for 1 hour and 7 minutes. Well, going, all right, when am I going to get my chance? When am I going to get my chance?
No, yeah, it's all this is really interesting.
Oh, it is. It's awesome. It's awesome.
And it's funny because I wasn't really ever into any of this until I started joining Neal doing this paranormal stuff, and it's like, oh wait, these are some pretty odd experiences. I need to kind of look into this other stuff too a little bit more, and it's funny because it brought me a little closer to my faith doing this work.
What is the paranormal except the search for proof of an afterlife?
Right.
And there are 2 things that created a religion in human society. One is suffering. Why is life unfair? And it's the search for the answer to suffering that leads us to look for gods, because all religion begins polytheistically. I mean, our eyes look around and see that things are different and different things happen for different systems, but also is the impulse to, once we were able to foresee our own end with our cerebral cortex, we started asking, well, then what happens? And 80,000 years ago, anthropologists noticed that people started burying the dead, and not just buried them, they buried them with brand new tools, with brand new clothes, with food, with money that demonstrates a belief in an afterlife. And so that religious impulse is always dual. For why is life unfair? Well, it's because there are crazy gods everywhere. And what happens when I die? That's the beginning of all search for truth.
Right.
You know what? I really, really enjoyed this episode. I really, truly did on this Easter Sunday. And I have to say thank you very much, Bishop Rake, for joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Man. Now, just so you know, we did reach out to the bishop to come to Parapalooza. She's going to hopefully take my invite on that.
Oh, absolutely.
And she is going to come up to stage, and she wants to explain some things to people, and we're going to give her that moment to help out with the causes that she tries to help out, which are very, very good. Bishop Rake, can you tell us anything that's going on with you or anything that you'd like to reach out with?
Well, I will just reiterate the theology school, because we have several professors. They're paid, and it's $130 for a 3-course semester course. So, and it's wonderful, and you can jump in at any time. So you can take my demonology course. You could take my theology course. Reverend Steringer is a wonderful teacher. She's teaching about mysticism of St. Hildegard of Bingen. You take these courses. They're non-synchronous. You don't have to be at a certain time at a certain place. You take it at your own pace. You have plenty of time to do so. It's the perfect thing for adult learners who are interested. And you could go to aaoccseminary.com. If you take my demonology course, it's a history beginning in Sumeria all the way through the modern day. And right now we're in the zombie crazes of the 12th and 13th century. So it's really interesting stuff. But if you take it, I donate my salary to our orphanage in Kenya. So just so you know, that's where all of my money goes, because those 15 kids have my heart out there with them. So, but please go check it out. See what's available. More is coming. We have 4 more professors joining. So please go check it out.
And make sure you share that with us so that we can share it on our end to help you out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you once again, Bishop Rake. That is Neal, and that is Steve with Graveside Paranormal. This is Spirits by the Graveside. And as always, boys and girls, boo.